Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series of interviews with disciples and devotees. Today I'm honored to have Dilip with us, and he's very well known in the ashram as a great artist and member of the Golden Chain. So Dilip, namaste.
Namaste.
And tell us, please, how you first heard of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And how old were you at the time?
We will go back when I was 8, which means I'm 69 now, so that is
61 years ago.
61 years ago.
So you didn't see Mother in the body?
No. So you listen to the story. I was in Africa, in Uganda, wonderful land. And this is before the Idi Amin days.
Oh, before him?
Yes, so we had the best of times.
And there were many Indian people
there. Were a huge Indian community, especially Gujarati Patels, of which I am a member.
Yes.
And my father ran a grocery shop out in the country, not in the city of Kampala. This is early days, so we were very near a lake. I think it's the Lake Victoria, and we could often hear the sound of lions. We heard foreigners, Europeans we used to call them, because they're all clubbed under Europeans who used to come and bathe and sunbathe by the lake. And the story is that one of the ladies, while she's having a good session in the sun, she gets snatched away by a crocodile. So this is all part of the folklore of the area, and very much a jungle and savanna and etc. that Africa is known for. So we are there in the country, and Dad, he hears of the visit of Puraniji. That is our Ambalal Purani.
Yes.
Very prominent sadhak in those days in the ashram, and he was on a world tour. I think America, Japan, and Africa.
I met him in America.
Okay, so maybe the same time. And he was introducing the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo to the community there, the Indian community. And so Father got very interested, and he attended the lecture, and he was smitten. He says, this is the place I must find out more about. And then he found out that there's a center, Sri Aurobindo Center, that is run by P.R. Patel, who is the father of Dipka Ben, Jyoti Ben, Gita, Mukundbai. I think you know them. The father and aunt used to run the center. So my father got to visit, and he liked the idea that you could have sessions of meditation and bhajans and weekly gatherings. So he took my mother along. Now Mother, she was even more touched by the whole thing. She looked at Mother's photograph just like I did when I was young, and it's like homecoming. She recognized that there is a deep connect here. There is no mental ideas or rationality. She just connected. So she was even more interested to find out more. And so Father found out that there's a school in Pondicherry where the children, I was 8 and my brother was 2 years older. So he was 10. And so started the journey. The interesting thing is that in those days we
did you all go? The whole family went?
No, so what happened was Dad was a little concerned about income, like how would you start a new life in Pondicherry? He only knows business. So he says, you, that is my mother and the 2 sons, you go and settle down, I'll join you later once I have found out more about business in Pondi. Because there was no question of becoming outright ashramites at that stage. He wanted the freedom of being able to move, wherever he wanted. So he left us at Mombasa port. We were traveling by ship. And at the port, my grandfather suddenly comes along, my mother's father. And he's super upset that we are joining an ashram. Now, an ashram to most Indians is a retreat where you don't connect with the world. You are in your own little space. So he thought that's what's happening to his daughter and the grandchildren. So he was very upset that my father is sending. So my father says, okay, we can solve the problem. You can keep your daughter and I will send my sons to Pondi. They'll go and stay in a boarding because he was adamant. So grandfather thought, of course, you can't separate a family. So he backed out. Mother joined us. We came to Pondi, incidentally in October, just as it is now.
October what year?
October 1963. So mother is very much around.
Oh, 63.
Yeah. And I remember the rain. I remember the trees in bloom. I remember the fact that very soon after reaching, we were to see the mother in her room. And I was a tiny tot. And we were waiting at the staircase leading up to her room. And I think Champaklalji was the one to take us to the mother. And he said, do you know, he's asking me, the youngest, do you know where you're going? And of course, I'd done my homework and I knew that we are going to see the mother. And I said, of course, we are going to see the mother. And he was very happy that I knew and what I'm doing. So he smiled and took us along. And of course, mother was all smiles and welcoming, very warm. What I remember of those early darshans in her room is that you're in another space. You don't want to leave that space. You just want to be there. You don't want to talk. You don't want to interact. She's doing all the work in you. And if you're receptive, that's all that's required. Even at that tiny stage, you could feel that you're in the presence of something unique. It's not going to be repeated very often in the earth atmosphere. So we spent a few minutes, the flowers were exchanged, and she said she had already seen the photographs. That's how you get selected for the school. So both brother and I, my brother is Kirit Patel, he's no more with us, he passed away 14 years ago, bad case of heart problems. But he was accepted, so was I, and we joined the school. The idea was that mother would leave us in a boarding, my mother would leave us in a boarding and go back to join father in Africa. And so we joined the Home of Progress that was run by Manoj Das and his wife Appa, I forget her name.
Manoj Das of Oriya.
Yes, yes. So we stayed 3 days. It was a new experience for me being away from mother and living communally. But she was crying all the time, my mother. She couldn't take the separation. And after a while, we got a little upset too. So I think word got to the mother that the family is separated and they don't want to, the kids don't want to stay in a boarding. So then it was decided that my mother would stay on. We would rent a house and she would look after us and we won't be in a boarding. So that's how we spent the 5 years we were in Pondi.
Where was the house?
The house was first, the first house was what is now Delhi Ashram house. Chitradi used to own the place, and so it got converted to Delhi house. We were on the first floor, and I remember the kitchen was impromptu, space in the balcony, because Pondi was always hot and humid as it is now, and you wanted circulation. And the neighbor, they were also in the ashram, the children, Pravina and Bharat Mistri. So the two ladies got along, so they would, cook together.
Is this where Chitra stays and Tara?
No. This is the building on François Martin. It's called Delhi House, I think, now.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, the building is still the same. It's just that it's converted for the children from the Delhi school to come and visit Pondi. But again, the talk of change of occupation. So that was the first house. And then we spent some time towards the sports ground. There was a house owned by Chote Narayanji. And we thought we are out in the digs. It was like very far. I mean, the sense of space, because you relate everything in the ashram to walking distance, you know. And ashram is obviously the hub, and you want to be as close as possible. The other house, there are many houses. One was Kalpana House, that is next to Central Bank on the Ginji.
2 streets from here.
No. You know the Ginji Canal? The canal, the main canal of Pondi.
Yes.
So the next street to ashram, where Rao, Urmila Ben, Usha Ben, they stay. Just across the road, there's a tiny narrow house. We used to call it the matchbox house, because it's like the matchbox is stacked on top, with the balcony being the inside where the matches are held, taken out. Anyway, so that was also very close to the ashram.
So how long did you stay there in the ashram?
First, continuously for 5 years.
Oh, with your mother?
With my mother. My father did join towards the end, and he started a little business, but he wasn't successful here. So he started thinking of the next step in life, and he wanted us to study further, like university level. And of course, ashram does do knowledge, but he thought of specialist subjects. So in the year 1968, towards the end, we left for UK, because there was no question of going back to Africa, because Idi Amin had already expelled all
foreigners, I think.
All foreigners, and we all had British passports, because Uganda was under the British at the time. So it was easy to stay in the UK. I did my schooling. So imagine after the ashram schooling, where, you don't want to miss a day. It's so wonderful, the system here, that if you're ill or you're gone away for whatever reason, you really miss the school. Even Sundays, we were always near the school. We were doing extracurricular activities, painting, whatever we wanted to do. So very much school-centric life for children. And then we go to UK, it's cold, it's miserable, it's raining. They're all foreigners to us. And the settling in was so bad for me, especially, that I stopped talking. It was just minimal talking. Because of the shock of the culture, of the life. Of course, UK now is very different, because with the huge influx of nationalities from all over. It's a wonderful place now.
And Sri Aurobindo centers, 3 of them.
The centers there, it's very active. But those days it was very quiet, and very English, very, how should I say, the English use the word themselves, stodgy. Stodgy being,
Yeah, stodgy.
Not very exciting life. You're just working and earning money. So I met a friend from the school in England years later when I joined college, and he said, Dilip. I said, yes. And he was a Cypriot, so I've forgotten his name, but I said, hi, long time we haven't met. He says, why are you talking so much? You never talked in school. Oh, what has happened to you? I said, I found my tongue when I joined college, because architecture college was a group of international students, and it was much nicer to interact with so many different. And the architecture course is a little like ashram course, where you don't have exams and homework. You are free to do your project for 3 to 6 months sometimes. So you do all the research, you relate to a tutor who guides you, but there's no written sit-down exams that other subjects would have. So I enjoyed that course.
I'd like to go back a little bit. So you're 8 years old when you first see Mother. And then when did you leave for England? How old were you?
I was 13, so 5 years later.
Okay, did you come back and see Mother?
So, sorry, I should mention that before we became fully British, we were stateless, me and my brother. because we were neither Indian, we were neither Ugandan, because we had left Uganda. They had offered citizenship to some Indians, the government there, and we were not British because we were born in Africa, but our names were mentioned in the mother's and father's passports. So we didn't have separate passports. So we had to stay in the UK for, I think, 5 years as stateless citizen to qualify for naturalization. That means you become British through
Yes.
the period of stay
Right.
that you've... Yeah, so I could not come back to Pondi, even though I badly wanted to. Imagine 1972, that is Sri Aurobindo's birth centenary. And it was a big affair. And mother was around and she was guiding
Yes.
all the programs. So very much wanted to come back. But we couldn't because of the passport issues. So the only time I could come back is after she had left in 1973. And that was in...
But when you were young and you were 8 or 9 or 10, did you have any special experiences with mother? Something that remains in-
So when I was in the ashram, there were 11 Dilips, sorry, not Patel,
Oh.
and 2 Dilip C. Patels, which is what I am. So imagine the confusion, with the records and things. So I wrote to the mother just before my birthday on a card that, "Mother, I would love to have a new name," because she was giving a lot of names to people who were not satisfied or wanted a new name. And so she wrote on the back of that card that, "I will give you a new name only when you're 14. I was I think 10 or 11 then. And she must have foreseen that I won't be in the ashram later on. And in England, there are hardly any Dilips. So I didn't bother her once I got there. But the fact that she wrote at length that I could have a new name at the age of 14 if I asked her then again. So I didn't bother her. I thought, why bother now that... So my need for a new name wasn't based on anything spiritual or, an awakening. She must have seen it's a very superficial demand. So let's see if he keeps quiet later on. So that's what happened. We often went to the mother, even though getting to her was restricted, mainly during any family member's birthday. So if my brother's birthday, we would all go to see her. That way we got a chance to see her, one-to-one or in close proximity. I had joined the class run by a German lady, I forget her name, and she did pottery, not far from the stores now, playground basically, actually, across the road. And so the entire class had done some pieces that we wanted to show the mother. So the mother said, "Yes, you can all come." Imagine 10 or 12 of us, we traipsed into that room
With your pottery?
with our little pottery. My mother still has kept what I had made. And imagine mother is seeing each one and each one's work. So all of us are just standing and looking at her because there's a chance that you are not going to get again. So we spent at least half an hour in the room with her. I remember the pottery teacher was in tears, because she was overcome with the fact that you're relating to the mother. And the other experience, again, it's to do with art. I was very young, I think soon after arriving in Pondi, and people had told me that, if you take anything handmade to the mother, she'll appreciate that a lot on your birthday. So I said, fine. I wasn't painting much then, but I thought, let me do a little village scene on a tray, like a little hut and trees and something that looks like a pond with glass. So I made all this and got it ready on a tray to take it to her. But by the time I got to her, everything was like, it wasn't professionally made. So it was falling apart, the trees had fallen. And I said, oh my God, what am I going to show her? This is all, like a storm has happened in this village. But she was the sweetest. She's looking at everything, pointing at everything, and asking me, what is this? How is this made? You know, she's all interest. And she's doing this with everyone. We were 800 children then. Now the ashram children, the school children are much less, I think 350. But we were a much bigger lot, and all got to go to see her. So you can imagine the interest she's taking on each child's development, physically, artistically. And she was always, you know, she's an artist, so she would appreciate artwork.
Yes.
And in those days, boys used to embroider also. We were all sent for embroidery. And with Beladi, who was a wonderful teacher. So I would embroider little handkerchiefs, and it would be pressed and, you know, made ready again for your birthday in a little box to take to the mother. And again, the appreciation was beyond words, how she would love people doing, you know, handicrafts or any kind of artistic work for her. And then I went to UK, I continued that tradition. So on my birthday, I would send her cards that I'd made. By the time I was painting and I was doing a lot more collage, etc. And she would pick out one card of that offered amount, and she would write on it, "Happy birthday," and send it back.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's like the touch is still there, even though you're thousands of miles away. Yeah.
So now we're back to architecture school.
Yes.
You graduated?
I graduated, and again, the ashram connection is still there. So we have a year where you spend in an office to gain practical experience of working as an architect. And this is in between postgraduate and after graduating studies. So I wrote to Roger Angers, and Auroville was happening, if you recall the period. Because we happened to be here, witness to Auroville inauguration at 68
Yes,
in February.
Yes, I was.
Oh, that was memorable.
Mother let me photograph it.
Oh,
So I was one of the guys down below doing the photography.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And you remember the red earth?
Yes.
And then, you know, we are all in buses from the ashram traveling to the banyan tree.
Right.
Because that's the only thing there in Auroville.
Yeah.
There was nothing else.
Nothing.
It was just that banyan tree. But already there was expectancy in the air that something major is happening. And again, as a child, you're witnessing all this. My brother even got to hold one of the placards for a country, I forget which. So he was part of the
line that went up
Yes.
and put the soil in.
Exactly, yeah. So Roger answered, I think the office that Roger ran answered saying, yes, you're most welcome, especially I think because there's no payment involved. You work as an intern to gain experience, and so there was no issue there. So I came back in 74 to work in the office in Auroville, Orofitu, with Pashi and Mutulingam. And Roger would come and go. He would be based in Paris, but he would come and be in the office to run a lot of projects that we were doing. Wonderful experience, especially working with him directly, because he's a master he's an artist also.
Oh yes,
And
he's shown me his work.
Exactly, and
And taken
Jacqueline
me
had
to that
organized.
room with Jacqueline, yes.
That's right. She'd organized an exhibition a few years
Yes.
ago. And in his basement, he used to just get waste material and make up sculptures. So to see him doodle on pieces of paper and then get his ideas across to all of us to put into proper buildings, that was a wonderful process. And that lasted 2 years. Instead of 1 year, I extended it 2 years, so I could go back to UK. I'll be behind by a year, but that didn't matter because this experience was far more rewarding.
Now, When did you come back permanently to the ashram?
Now, after qualifying as an architect, UK was going through a recession, so there was no work available and as an architect in the building trade. So my brother had already joined, he's a foreign exchange dealer, manager in currencies, and he got a very lucrative job in Kuwait. So he says, why don't you try your luck here? Middle East is like a big building site. I'm sure they'll find work for you. So I joined him in Kuwait, and whilst I'm trying to settle in, he's getting an offer in Abu Dhabi for an even better job with more responsibility, with trading in money plus property. I mean, they trade in everything in Abu Dhabi because of the petrodollars. There's so much income coming from petrol that it needs to be invested in various ventures. So he was in charge of foreign exchange. So I joined him again in Abu Dhabi, and strangely it was a British firm that offered me a job, and it was a very small office, only 3 or 4 of us, but we were doing fairly major jobs. Unfortunately, one of them was designing a prison out in the desert for basically Indian migrants who've overstayed their visas. Very sad, because we had to design these rooms, and they said fairly large room, but put 50 people in there, accommodation for at least 50. And I think it's still there in the Middle East, this prison facility that they made. Of course, Indians did overstay in huge numbers because of the lucrative job offers, and they didn't get their papers legalized, and so it was sad that you get that side of life in Abu Dhabi where you have very lucrative jobs, good housing, and all the perks of a professional, and then you have this labor situation which is very sad. I think it's improved a lot though, because India is now a major economy,
sure,
and they don't. Yeah.
So then from there?
So Abu Dhabi was, I think, 81 to 90. And the war happened, the Gulf War, with Kuwait being invaded by Iraq. So the whole region is under tension, like, what's going to happen? Because all the oil fields were burned by the invaders. They were just flares forever, not. So it took years for the gas fields to be put out. I mean, it was that bad. And it's all in the proximity. It's not far away. So my company, by then I was at a job in Saudi Arabia, and the company was American, Bechtel, and the management decided that they'll shift and move the entire workforce to their home towns, wherever they come from in the world, and then when the situation is better, to relocate them, if they want to come back. So my wife, by then I had a little, 2 daughters, yes, and my wife decided that we'd rather come back to India and Pondi, because she's from Jipma, father was a surgeon there. So she said, I'd rather, rather than settle in the UK, which is alien for me, and not for me, but for her and for the children, to come back and settle in Pondi. So I said, fine, but I wasn't released just then. So she was taken by flight to Gatwick. She spent 3 days at the airport there, and then they got her tickets for India. So she got, imagine a woman traveling with 2 tiny tots, this tension of the husband being stuck in the, she was, she said it was a tough period for her. I also joined her in the UK before she left for Pondi for a few days. We tried out a primary school for the elder one, Namrata, but she said, they're putting me in classes which are not my level. They go by age and my ability. At 5, she's telling me all this, Whoa. So we decided this is not for her. If she's going to suffer for education, we'd rather go and apply in the ashram and see what happens. So she came here, we applied. Eventually she got in, the elder one. The little one was too young. And so that was the homecoming in 1991, yeah.
May I ask you to share with me some of the ashramites with whom you were quite close?
Well, I don't know if you probably do know that ashram was much tighter knit in those days. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have television, we didn't have these external distractions that we all have now. Yes. And so the weekly cinema was our highlight. You interacted a lot with ashramites because they were teachers who were fully committed in the ashram schools. But even otherwise, people like Pujalal, who lived right in the ashram compound. And as children, we were allowed to learn Sanskrit from him, shlokas. So every morning at 6, imagine a child now going to the ashram at 6. Nobody does that. But we were there at 6. We were chanting these shlokas from him, every morning. So that was a wonderful experience. Vasudha-ben I was very close to because she was in charge of the embroidery department, and she would come at 2 in the afternoon after giving mother a bath. So mother used to bathe in the afternoon every day. And so Vasudha-ben would be fresh from that interaction with mother, and she would tell us stories about mother and the perfumes and the various things that she used. So that was a good relationship with Vasudha-ben. Who else now?
Oh, Pranab.
Pranabda is of course always there as in the group activities. If any problems or anything you need to discuss, you could always visit him. And what was remarkable was his memory, sharp as anything. For years, if you don't see him, you've gone abroad and you come back, Dilip Babu, he'll say immediately, and he would make you feel at home. Of course, his powerful presence, dominates everything. So you feel very intimidated by that, especially if you're a child. But he was very, very warm, very warm.
Did you know Nolini?
Nolinida, not in a personal capacity. He was the secretary of the ashram. So any matters regarding letters, like if my father wrote a letter to the mother, it would go through Nalinida, and she would answer through Nalinida also. Amritada, he was around, yes.
And Pavitra?
Very much. Pavitrada, Noren Singda.
Yes, I know.
We were all stamp collectors. So we all went to see him. And what wonderful stories with the stamps, and he was very sweet, very sweet. I'm trying to think. Niratadi, Paruldi, Tara.
Yes.
All very active.
You knew all of them.
All of them, because they were all our captains. Grant.
Yes, Grant.
Gatta of Grant. That we remember.
And did you know Usha-ben and Chunibai?
Not too well, no. I think my mother knew because of the age similarity. But this Usha-ben I knew, the artist. And Urmila-ben, her sister.
Yeah.
And they were across the road also.
And did you know Lilu and Pushpa?
Yeah. The wonderful time we used to have with the granny, that is Daihiba. She was in the same ground floor house that Lilu-ben and Usha-ben.
Same house, yeah, right.
two parts, but yeah, same house. And I remember the ashram bread used to be like little buns in those days, not the long bun that you have. And she would call us over because I don't think we had access to butter and things like that, which you take for granted now. So she would toast this slices from the bun and apply lots of butter because she knew that as children we would love it. So forever she was providing little sweetmeats, and she also has incredible memory. She would remember anybody from Africa. It doesn't have to be a family member, but she would connect through people she knew, that family member. So she knew our family, although we never met. Yeah, wonderful lady.
And Maniben?
Maniben is
The eldest sister,
yes.
yes.
I think as an architect, she asked me advice for the ventilation of the marbling. Because they were using so much of this enamel paint that it was causing problems with breathing. And it's not very safe anyway, the paint. So she asked me to devise, exhaust fans and stuff to clear the air, to make it safer for people.
Did you know Huta?
Very much, yes.
Very much?
Yeah. Huta Ben used to love children. So she would, always pick out children, even when she's walking, she would stop and chat with them. And I remember not too long ago, she met me on the road and she said, "You must come and see my collection of mother's letters, things that I've received from her."
Oh, she was living near Marbling Group at that time?
No, this is
she was
before
in
that.
Laljibai's house.
She was still in Laljibai house, and then she was offered a few rooms at Amba Bhikshu. So she had like 3 or 4 rooms because she had such a big collection of mother's, and she called it, she made a trust called
Navavihan.
No.
Havya. I know it, yeah.
Havya something, yes, the trust.
Havyavan.
That's right.
Havyavan.
So everything was, under that trust. And she wanted Auroville also to share. Yes. So all her paintings, because we were around when she was painting these Savitri paintings, all hundreds of them. And so she offered everything there to Auroville. Yeah, it was a good relationship.
And Manoj Dasgupta and Arati?
Not so much.
Not so much.
Not so much, because he was a teacher in school. He wasn't a trustee.
Okay.
And he was active, I think, in the children who are much older. So I never had him as a teacher. But I had Ratnadi. I had
Ratna, yes.
Yes. Bhavatarinidhi. Kittu, no. Again, he's much older.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your art, and then we'd like to get into
so
Golden Chain.
As you know, Mother encouraged anything to do with creativity. So she would, I remember everybody painted, everybody did something or other. It doesn't matter whether you had the skill or not. Imagine people like Bhattida, I mean, he does have ability to paint, but he was encouraged by Mother. So it wasn't as if you're gifted and you are an artist. It's like everybody's doing something with the aim to show it to the mother on their birthdays. Yeah. So it was a very widespread activity. And I had a wonderful teacher called Alice from America. She had come to teach art to us children in Dalafon, that is middle school. And I was fascinated because she was left-handed and she would write like that. And I thought, why is she contorting her arm so badly to write? Why can't she write normally? Because I didn't know that, that
somebody could be left-handed.
Because they have to write like us from left to right, right?
Left to right,
so ideally, lefties should be able to write right to left, But the general trend is to write from left to right. I mean, the Arabs have obviously changed all that. But yeah, so she would teach us, and she gave us some very good grounding on sketching, and she had lived here a few years before she went back to America. Yeah. So the art developed under all these teachers, and then in the UK I continued with sculpture and art and fine art, but I didn't want to make a career out of it because it is tough. You know the saying, all artists are struggling to make a living, which is quite true. It's very difficult to establish yourself.
Same with poets.
With poets, absolutely. Yeah, there's not much demand for poetry. So I did it as something that I want to do all my life, but with a profession that pays, which is architecture. And architecture is creative. It's not unrelated
Sri
to art.
Aurobindo ranks it very high.
Very highly. I know. And so I was doing both these activities, and when I got to work here in Pondi as an architect, I quickly realized it's not my field to deal with the masons, the subcontract. It's not the same thing as abroad where it's very structured and professional. Here it's very loose, so you have to be very good at relating with the workers, the language, getting your what you have in mind, out there in a
realized.
Absolutely. So it was tough. So I gave it up after a few years, and I said I'll do painting and artwork full time. So that's what I've been doing since. Yeah, it's been wonderful. My experiences as an artist it's a yoga, as you know. When you want to do yoga of Sri Aurobindo, it requires a lot of concentration, commitment, the various surrender. Here with art, it happens almost naturally because you have to concentrate. You can't produce artwork without concentrating, without the focus, without the one-pointedness. You're not thinking of anything else. You're doing just that. So that is a good way of doing yoga. If you are, gifted, all the more easier for you because you have talent and you're just using that talent to further your yoga.
So you concentrated on that. Can we talk a little bit about Golden Chain and your experience?
Swarna Bhumi, as you know, was land that Golden Chain fraternity acquired many years ago. And it was a wonderful idea to have, in those days we had trees planted by Nirodha, by whoever was senior in the ashram.
I still take care of the service tree.
Service tree. It's doing so well. It's doing well, right?
It's doing very well.
So
every year I have to go out. Akshay wants me to see it.
Wonderful. Yeah, he's taken over when I was the only one who voted not to sell land. As a Patel Gujarati, you never sell land.
I see.
You leave it for future generations because you're custodians. You are not actual owners. You are passing it on to other people. So I said, at least leave a portion, the portion that is service tree. That would be wonderful for the alumni to go to. But I was outvoted, so the entire package was put out on auction, and Akshay bid the highest eventually, and he's doing good work there.
Yes, he is. Sending milk to the ashram every day.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Papaya and other things, banana.
So that's when I got involved with because my land is nearby, and I go often to the place. So they came to me, the trustees of Golden Chain. They said, "Why don't you join us? Because you're so involved with this work." I said, "I don't want a desk job. I don't want to sit in, this is not my work." They said, no, you don't have to. We don't require people to be there in the office regularly. You can show up for the meetings once in a while. So that's how I joined. And then after a few years, we were looking for a replacement for our own managing trustee, that is Ram Sehgal. And Pranati was very keen that I take over because I already had the experience of all these years. And she said, it's not tough, and we know each other, we work well, and you can do the 4 years that are required to head the organization. So we did that, and COVID happened during my tenure. So I said we must do things for the ashram. I mean, although ashram has the full setup for tackling the crisis, I thought we, as individuals, we can, they can bypass maybe, this department, that permission, and just offer things directly. So we were involved there. Then Sri Aurobindo's 150th anniversary happened. And I said, we have to celebrate this. Mother wanted very much the town to celebrate it, when the centenary, 1972. So this is a momentous event. So we got in touch with a lot of artists from India, and they all offered to perform for the ashram. Wonderful events we had, quite a few of them. And some, they still want to come back and offer after their experience during those years. We try to be the link between ashram and the local community, in the sense that ashram is involved too much with its own maintenance, upkeep, the programs, that it doesn't have time for interaction with the local community. Or, so if we are there, we can help, like the beach cleanup that's happening now, although we are not directly initiating it, but we are supporting that kind of activity, or generally waste management in Pondi, which is...
Oh, this is what Mother wanted in Oroville, this outreach to the local community.
She called the local Aurovillian, the Tamil villages, the first Aurovillians.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful, yeah. So we try to act as the go-between with and have a goodwill. They shouldn't see ashram as a very insular organization. We are there. We are part of the township, so we should interact. And there is so much lack of knowledge about Sri Aurobindo and his philosophy immediately out in the town. So it's a good way to spread that. Yeah.
Did you have any association with the society, Sri Aurobindo Society?
We worked on one or two events together. I think not directly, but with the sourcing of oneness, which Auroville Society, Ashram, ex-students, we are all involved in meeting and discussing the philosophy, activities that you could do together, because finally we are all one. We are not society or Auroville or ashram. We are all linked with the mother's love. So that should be the foremost, not, partisan approach. So yeah, we are all for that. Any organization that wants to promote the idea, India or abroad, because we have former students all over the world, and they're all doing well with Mother's grace, and all are well settled. But they can be linked this way, that do an activity that makes you come closer. Like Sunaina does an annual visit to Sri Aurobindo's school, although the school is not longer there, St. Paul's. The school is replaced by a little green patch, like a garden. So every year she gathers all the ashram former students who are there living in England. This time I happened to be there, so we met around 15, 20 of us. Then we walked to Sri Aurobindo's house, which is not too far. It's still far, and imagine a child, Sri Aurobindo being 9 or 10, having to walk in those days, very cold weather, not having eaten also sometimes. You know the story where his father stopped
sending money.
Sending money. Yeah, the hardship must have been incredible. So we walked to the house where the blue plaque is kept with the help of Sunaina and her husband. the house got that blue plaque, which is a heritage plaque. And it says, she was relating to us the story that it says sage, philosopher, under the name Sri Aurobindo, lived here, and sage, philosopher, etc. And apparently Sri Aurobindo wanted to be known as a poet, first and foremost. Imagine the humility. I mean, he's our guru, but he wants to be known as a poet. Okay.
So you did the 4-year?
I did the 4-year, and we are now, we have Brata, Buchu, who's taking over. And he's had wonderful experiences in America, in the medical world, and then he's linked with the ashram medical department also. So he will bring a lot of new ideas and administrative qualities to the organization.
Now it's many of the ashramites have grown much older.
Much older, yes.
What do you see at the moment?
You know, I'm a born optimist. So
Good.
I always look at the positive side of things. And this is mother's creation, okay? You know very well that mother's, so much of her input has gone into making the ashram. I don't think she'll ever abandon us in the sense that, you know, things are not going right way, we have this problem, that problem. Ultimately, it's her decision. If the ashram has to go, it'll go.
But Gerard from Oro Orchard, Swiss Gerard, who used to be in the mountains and then came to Oro Orchard, and he asked Mother, what is the difference in the ashram in Oroville? And Mother said, the ashram will always be here for those who want to do the integral yoga. And then she said, at Oroville, it is so wide.
Right. It's very inclusive, yes.
Beautiful answer.
Lovely answer. Yes. She made the distinction for the ashram being the source or the
source of the yoga.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dilip.
Thank you so much.